so that you know that we are recording. We will share the link to these to everybody at the end of the class so you can know where you can go to get them as well. So thanks, Diana just started recording for us. So welcome to Tests and Quizzes in Blackboard. I'm going to be sharing my screen and kind of going through this process. Our thought is we'll show this, but again, since we're recording it, you can go back and watch the recording whenever you want afterwards as well, and be able to look at how to do things if you would like. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Which is this one. Okay, so here is a course that I have. I have this open just for today to be able to talk in and work with you. So when you are creating tests in Blackboard, I recommend that you always go through the course tools area at the left-hand side. When you click on course tools and expand them, it gets you the whole list of the tools, and tests, surveys, and pools is down at the bottom of the page. So I'm going to click on tests, surveys, and pools, and that will take me to the place where I can go to these three different spaces. Really quickly, tests are any type of quiz or test that you want to create that your students will take, where you can record exactly what they're doing. So it'll record who answers what, when they answered it, it records everything. And we'll go through all the different test question types in just a second, what that can look like. But the tests are all stored here. Surveys, and it says this right here, are not graded, and student responses are anonymous. So that's the big difference is with the survey, it uses all the same question types, but it doesn't record any specific students. So if you want to do a survey, you can put it into the surveys area. Tests is the area for actual tests where you want to know what every single student answers. The last one are called pools, and this is where you can create a large group of questions that they call a pool of questions that you can then use in multiple places. So a couple examples of this are if you want to be able to have a test where there's 30 questions in there, but only 10 are used per student, so it randomly pulls 10 out of the 30 questions in, they use pools to create that pool of questions and then randomly pull 10 out of. Or some people like to create a pool of questions around a topic, and then they can use those in different tests. So maybe at the beginning of the semester they have a short test that's talking about vocabulary, and it uses 1 or 2 questions from that. But later on you want to pull in 5 or 6 questions about vocabulary. If you have a pool of questions, you can do that. And again, I'll show you how those all work together, but just so you know the difference between the tests, surveys, and pools right now, that's where those are. I'm going to click on tests right now at the top of the page. And this will take me to the space where I can start building tests or import tests. So we're going to talk about building a test first, and then we will go into importing tests after that. So we can kind of see what that looks like as well. And yes, Lisa, the pool does keep track of which questions you've used, and I'll show you what that looks like, so that you can get an idea. You can know where a question is being pulled into in an actual test. Okay, so we're going to click on Build Test in order to start building a test. And when I click on Build Test, it takes me to the place where I can put in the title of this test. This could be your Chapter 1 test. It could be it could be a review test. It could be whatever, your Unit 1 test, whatever you want to title this. I'm going to call this Chapter 1. As you notice, the name is required, but there's a place in addition for a description and instructions. You don't have to put anything into here if you don't want to, or you can. These are optional. So for description, you could put in, this is covering all the content in Chapter 1 that we talked about this week, or it could be whatever you want to here. I'm just going to type in, here's the description right now. I want you to see where it shows up in just a little bit. I'm going to click Submit now, and this takes me to the place where I can actually start working on my test. This is called the test canvas inside of Blackboard. So with the test canvas, there are 3 options across the top. One is create questions, one is reuse questions, and one is upload questions. The upload questions only works if you know Excel really well. There is a way where you can type questions in Excel and then have them brought into here. We're not going to cover that today because it's a little bit further in depth. But if you do go to that, there's some instructions on how to do that if you're interested. For right now, I want to look at create questions. So I'm going to hover over create questions. And these are all the different types of questions that you can ask inside of a test in Blackboard. Now, before I go into each one of these, I just want to say there's no requirement for the number of any types of these. You could have it be all multiple choice, and that's fine. You could have one of each of these, and that's fine. You could have 3 multiple choice and 3 fill in the blanks and 3 short answer questions in any order that you want to. So it's really up to you how you use these test questions. These are just all the options that are there. Now that we have this, I'm going to go quickly through each one of these so you can kind of get an idea of what you can ask. The other thing that I'll talk about is which one of these are automatically graded and which ones you would still have to go in and grade manually. And we'll talk through that as we go through each of these. So with calculated, I'm going to do calculated numeric first, the second one. Calculated numeric is where I put in an equation and the students have to answer it correctly. So Sally has 2 apples. John has 3 apples. How many apples do they have total? And so I put in the calculated numeric is 2 plus 3. They have to know to answer 5 to get it correct. So you can put in some, and you can get very complicated with your formulas if you would like to, but it will use that to then determine what the correct answer is, and the students have to put in a numeric correct answer. Calculated formula means that I can put in a formula there using variables, and with the variables, it will then generate different numbers for each student. So in this case, with calculated formula, it will say I can put in Johnny has X number of apples and Susie has Y number of apples. How many do they have total? For one student, it might be 2 and 3, and they have to answer 5. But for another student, it might be 7 and 8, and they have to put in 15. So with numeric, it's everybody answers the same. Formula, you put in a formula with variables, and they can have different answers. Either way, both of these are automatically graded because it knows what the right answer is based off of either the answer you put in or the formula that you put in. Either or questions are just like multiple choice questions, but with only 2 answer options. So the answer is either this or that, and you set what the right answer is, so it is automatically graded by Blackboard as well. Essay questions are essay questions where the students actually type out multiple paragraphs inside of the test. So you can ask them to type on whatever topic you want to. These are not automatically graded in any way. You have to go in and actually manually grade these. You can put in examples of what they should answer. You can put in a rubric for these, but you actually do have to go in and grade essay questions. File response questions allow you to have the students upload something to this. So I think of these a lot like the assignment, where maybe they'll write an exam, or they'll write a paper in advance, and as part of the test they actually turn it in, or they have to write something on scratch paper and take a picture of it and turn it in. So it could be you ask a question on a formula and they have to put in the answer, and then right below it you say, okay, now take a picture of your work that you did and turn that in through the file response so I can see that as well. So file responses are where they actually upload something, upload a file as their response. Those are not automatically graded either. You have to grade those if you want to do that. Fill in the blank is where I have a blank on the page and the students have to type in the correct answer. The capital of New York is blank, and they have to actually type in Albany. And then I can type in anything that I would accept. So I could type in Albany all upper, or with an uppercase A. I could type in Albany with a lowercase a. I could type in Albany with maybe a spelling, the misspelling that I think they might do. So I can give some different options on what I would accept as the correct answer. And then it would mark it automatically based off of if they typed in exactly what I had typed in or not. Fill in multiple blanks is the same way, except there's multiple blanks in one sentence. So the colors of the United States flag are blank, blank, and blank, and they'd have to type in red, white, and blue. Again, you would type in what you would accept for those, and then it would grade it based off of what you had typed in. It does automatically grade these, but I find with these, you need to go back in and check because sometimes students might spell something in a way you weren't expecting, or they'll type in something that you're like, oh yeah, I will accept that. So you can go back in and change the grade on those. So those are automatically graded, but I recommend going back in and checking those if you use those. The hotspot question is where there's a picture that's on the page, and you circle where they need to click on the picture to answer correctly. And as long as they click inside of the area where you circled, they would get that answer correct. So maybe you have a picture of the human skeleton and you say, click on the femur. You would actually circle the femur, and as long as they clicked inside of the place where you circled, then it would be answered, marked as correct. If you clicked on any other bone in the body, it would mark it as incorrect. So it automatically grades these, and so that's how those work. Jumbled sentence is where there's a drop-down menu, and you get to select the correct response from the drop-down menu. So I think of this like a word bank. Here's all the possible words it could be. You select the right one. You can have multiple drop-downs in one sentence. So let's say you have 3 drop-downs and there's 3 places where they have to choose the correct answer, but maybe you have 6 answer options inside of there. So there's only 3 that are correct. Or you can even reuse the same word multiple times inside of one question. So you can have a lot of extra words in there that aren't used, or you can say just the words that are actually in there. But that's a jumbled sentence where you choose from a drop-down. Again, jumbled sentence is automatically graded because you set what the right answer is from that drop-down list. Matching is like vocabulary. So matching, you set up a list of words and a list of definitions, and they have to match the right word to the right definition. So there's a drop-down menu next to the first one that says select A, B, C, D, E from this list over here to go next to this first word, second word, third word. So that's matching. Multiple choice is our regular multiple choice. A, B, C, D, one of these is correct, select the right answer. That is automatically graded because you set the right answer. Multiple answer, just above that, has more than one correct answer. That's where we usually say check all that apply. And with check all that apply, let's say there's 5 answer options and 3 are correct. You can then say if they answer 2 of the 3, do you give them partial credit, or do they have to get all 3 of them to get all of the credit? So you can kind of decide how you want to give the points inside of that. But with multiple answer, then you can set there are 3 correct answers, there are 4 correct answers. You get the ability to do that. I'm going to skip over opinion Likert scale because that's in here because of the survey options that are here. So we don't use these in tests, so nobody uses these here. But it is, since they use the same mechanism to do all these, it's just in here. Ordering is sequencing. So I can have 5 things. It's listed on the page, and there's a drop down next to each one of them, and you have to set the right order. So maybe this one's first. So in the drop down, you put a 1 next to this one. And then this one is actually second in order. So you put in a drop down and puts 2 next to this. So it allows you to order them to say which comes first in a sequence. And again, that's automatically graded as well. Quiz Bowl is like Jeopardy. You have to answer in the form of a question. I don't like these as much because there's a lot of variation on how they can answer. And it's just like the fill in the blanks where you have to type in what the correct answer is. I usually find these are better for if you want to put in a review for students to have the Quiz Bowl available. But by default, I don't really like the Quiz Bowl for actual tests because there's just a lot of variation. It does grade these, but again, because there's so much they could answer here, I don't really recommend it. Short answer is just like essay, except a shorter area to write in. So usually it's 2 to 3 sentences that you write for these. Again, these are not graded. You have to grade them on your own because there's no way to set what the correct answer is. And then the last one is true and false. And for true and false questions, there's just 2 options of true and false. You can go from there. Okay. That was really quick. I'm going to say this before I go on. At the top of the page under more help, there's additional information about each of these question types. So you can always go up here, or you can always go to help at the bottom of the page and Blackboard help for instructors, and that'll give you more information about all the question types as well. So there's a couple things that popped up in the chat. I just want to make sure that those are all good to go. So Janet, you were asking about matching questions. Yeah, so if you want to have the students match a word to a list of definitions, that would be under matching, and we can look through some of these in just a little bit. And D, you had asked about if they're uploading presentations, slides, can the students upload to a file response? The short answer is yes, but usually I really recommend using the assignment tool if they're going to be uploading things instead of the file response, just because if you're doing inside the file response, it's an extra step inside of a test with other things in there, so it just adds more to it. I usually don't like to use the file response here. I'd rather do it through an assignment tool so they can just upload there. All right. So we're going to add a couple of questions to the page right now. I'm going to go through a couple different ones so you can see what some of the different ones look like. I'm going to start with the multiple choice question just because that's the one that most people use. So I'm going to hover over create question and select multiple choice. And when I do, it's going to go to the place where I can actually add in a multiple choice question. There is a title for the question at the top of the page. This helps for some sorting purposes, but is not required. I have never put a title in for any of my questions. I'm not a big fan of it because it's just extra work for me. I go directly to the question text, which is where you would actually ask the question. So I'm going to ask a question. And what is the capital of New York? And only the question goes here. None of the answer options go here. So I go to my question, I ask the question, and then I scroll down on the page, and then I have some options. Do I want any numbering next to the answer options? Normally, a lot of times we say A, B, C, D. Some people like 1, 2, 3, 4. You can put that next to it. I actually leave it as none because it just makes it a little clearer, and I like to show my answers in random order, so they just have them listed there. So if you do any of these options, you have to do it per question. So just be aware if you start selecting A, B, C, D, you're gonna have to do this every time you create a multiple choice question. It doesn't carry over from one to the other. So I'm gonna leave this as none for right now. The second answer option is, do you want the answers to be listed vertically, which is what we usually see, they're underneath each other, or horizontally where they're all on one line. Horizontally makes it shorter on the page, right? Because it's not listing all the answer options down. But most people usually do it vertically because it just visually looks a little easier for students. So I'm going to leave it as vertical for this. Allow partial credit doesn't make sense on a multiple choice question, but it does for a multiple answer question, which we'll have in just a second. So I'm going to leave that unchecked. And then show answers in random order means if I have 4 answer options, for one student it might come in this order, and for another student it might come with this order. Each student, the answering options is listed differently for them. So some people like this just because then the test is kind of randomized per student. I then get into the place where I can add my answer options. One of my favorite things in here is that the number of answers in this drop-down list, you can have up to 100 answer options for one question if you want to. If anybody ever does that, please let me know. I would love to see the question where you have 100 answer options for one question. I'm going to leave it at 4 for right now, 4 answer options, but you can change this to be 5, 6, or 7. Some people do 5, and I've seen 6 and 7 sometimes as well. I then get to the place where I can put in my different answer options. And actually, Janet, you can have less than 4. If you don't want one, then you can scroll down below it and just click remove, and then you could just have 3 answer options. If you want to go to 2 answer options, then I recommend just doing the either or question type instead, because that's what it's there for. It's either this or this, which is your 2 answer options. But if you want 3 answer options, you can just click remove on one of these, and then it goes down to 3. Since I always have it show answers in random order, I always have my first question be the right one, because then it just randomizes per student anyways. So the correct answer here is Albany, B-A-N-Y. I'm going to put in New York City. I'm going to put in S-Y-R-A-C-O-C. And since we're in Oneonta, I'm going to put in Oneonta. Now, the little circles to the left of the answer options are how you can set which answer is correct. By default, the answer 1 is set to be correct, but I can change it to be so that answer number 3 is correct. Now I'm purposely leaving it on answer number 3, even though it's wrong right now. I know this. I know that the capital of New York is Albany, but I'm leaving it on Syracuse for just a second because I want to be able to show you again how you can get back into it. Okay, so we set the correct answer, and then there's some places where you can give feedback to students. You could say for correct feedback responses, great job. We covered this on Wednesday in the information in chapter 1 on this. I'm glad you were able to look over it. And you can also set incorrect. So if a student gets it wrong, they would get different feedback that says, hey, remember we covered this on Wednesday. It's on page 24 in the book. You can kind of give some explanations if you want to help students be able to go back and figure out where that information actually is. This is not required, but it is there if you want to be able to do it. There are some additional things down at the bottom for keywords and categories. This is really for reporting. If you want to go back and look at reports, most people don't do this because it's a lot of work. But if you get any content from publishers, a lot of times they'll have things in here so you can kind of see. If I ask questions on geography, I could put in a category of geography, and then it would let me see how my students did on all my geography questions. So just so you know, that's what those are there for. And then finally, there are instructor notes at the bottom, which are only for you. If you are like, I wrote this question, but I think it might be a little challenging for students, I'm going to be interested to see how the results are. Any notes that you might want to give to yourself about that specific question, you can put these in here. I'm not going to put those in there. I'm just going to click create right now. I'm sorry. I'm going to click submit right now. So I'm going to click submit, and it actually puts it out into my test canvas now. So here's my first question, and it shows me what my question is and my answer options and what I have selected as the correct answer. Now I'm looking at this and I realize, oh no, I didn't select the right answer. I need to go back in and edit this. So the way you edit any question afterwards is to hover over it and click on the drop down, and then you have the options of details, edit, copy, or delete, and I want to edit this. So I can go back in to edit this, and then once I'm in here, I can go through and either change wording in my question itself if I need to, or I can scroll back down and I can select Albany. Sorry, I can select Albany as the correct answer option. And now when I click submit, it will be updated. Okay, so here it is from Albany. Now that's the correct answer. When the students take the test, if they select Albany, they will get the point for this. If they don't, then they will not get the points for this. And Lisa, yes, I'll be talking a little bit about how you can upload questions. And yes, once questions are uploaded into your Blackboard, you have the ability to edit any question. So once it's here, if you have things from your publisher, but you don't really like the wording of it, you can edit that as much as you want to make it like how you want to ask the question. So publishers are great as a starting point to get the questions into there, and then you can kind of tweak them and work with them if you want from there. All right, so we have our first question in here. At the top right side of the page, it shows the points. By default, Blackboard sets all questions to 10 points. If you don't like that, if you want it to be something different, let's say you want by default every question to be worth 1 point, then that's under question settings at the top of the page. So at the top right side of the page, there's a question settings area. And when I click on question settings, this is the things that I want to have be default for this specific test. Now, it's only for this test, so you have to change this for each test that you create, but at least it's there. So I can say specify default points. Instead of having it be 10 points, I can set it to 1 point or 2 points or whatever it is you want to be for this specific test. When I click submit, any question I add from this point will be worth 1 point by default. But if you notice, it didn't change my 10 points in this first one. I have to change that one itself. So in order to do that, you actually click right on top of the number. I can then change this to be worth 1 point and click submit. And now this is worth 1 point. All right, so we have our first question in here. We have it a multiple choice question, and we have it set to be 1 point. So now we can add our next question in. And there were some requests for a matching question, so we'll do a matching question next. So I'll go down and do a matching question. When I do a matching question, the question itself, you would say, here it's a little tricky because for me, I always say, oops, sorry, I need to be in the text. Match the terms below to their definitions. And so in this case, it's not really a question, it's a statement, but this is what I want to say at the top. Hey, look below and match the terms to their definitions. So now I get to go down and I can say, how many of these do I want? How many terms and definitions am I going to do? I can have it be as many in here as I would like. I'm going to leave it as 4 right now. Now I can set up the question answer pair. So here the question is going to be the term, the answer is going to be the definition. So my term is going to be quarter note. I teach music, so I'm going to default to music right now. The answer here is going to be worth one. I'm sorry. Lasts 1 beat in 4/4 time signature. All right, so I can set up the definition as the question and the answer as the, the term as the question and the definition as the answer. All right, so I can now go down to my next question pair, and I can say a half note. And for the answer here, this lasts 2 beats in the 4/4 time signature. And then I can go down to my next question and I can go to a whole note. And for my answer, I can say lasts 4 beats in 4/4 time signature. And then for my last one, I can say half note. And for my answer, I can say lasts half a beat in 4/4 time signature. Now, if you notice, there's an option that says reuse answer choice from. So you could have multiple things that go into another area. So you could have it be put all of these animals into the right category that they go into. So, you know, anything that's, I'm going to get out of my depth right now. So anything that has 4 hooves goes into the 4-hoof category. Anything that has fins goes into the fin category. So I could say just reuse something from an earlier question as well, so that can have multiple things inside of here. So you can either have this be a definition, matching word to definition, or it could be put all of these things into a specific category, and then you can just reuse them as you would like. Additionally, there's the amount of credit each one of these gets. By default, when I have 4 of these, it says each one of them can be worth 25%, or you can set that so that some of these are weighted more heavily than others. Once I have that, then I can say, it's going to ask me, do I want to place these in any specific order, or do I want it to be random? I like it randomized because it just makes it easier for me to think about. It just goes differently for every single person. So I set it randomly, but you can also set it to manually, where you say, I want the one I did first to be second, and set these. The answers will be randomized. It won't do those in the same order, but it just kind of lets you choose the order of the answers and how that would go. Again, we have our feedback and our categories and our instructor notes, but I'm going to go ahead and click submit right here so that so we can see this. Once I have this, it now goes onto the page, and I can see what this would look like and what the correct answer is for each of these. For this one, I don't want it to be 1 point. I'm going to make this 4 points since there's 4 matching questions in here. So I'm going to change this one to be 4 points. So if they get 1 of them right, they'll get 1 point. If they get 2 of them right, they'll get 2 points. If they get 3 points, and so on. So that's another question. And Janet, you'll be able to see that in just a little bit, because I'm going to show you what this looks like from the student perspective in just a second. I can go on and add as many questions as I want to in here. I could go in and add a multiple answer question. I could go in and add more multiple choice questions. I can add in anything that I want inside of here. I'm going to stop on this one just because I want to move on to the next part of it. So once I'm done, I can click OK. And once I do that, then it gets put into my test area. Now, what I like about working on tests here is I don't have to finish it all at once. I can work on it for a little while. I can leave. When I'm ready to continue working on it, I would go back to course tools. I would go back to test surveys and pools, and then go back to tests. And then I'm right back to where my test is. If I want to keep working on this now, I can click on the little arrow to the right of it and click edit. And now I'm back into where I can edit the questions and add more questions in. So at this point, I'm just working on it. It's in the background. Students don't have access to it. And you can tell that because in the deployed area, it says, no, it's not deployed right now. Deployed is the word that Blackboard uses to say, is it in a place where students have access to it? So when it's here and it's not deployed, then no students have access to it at any point. All right. Now, there was a question about if you get tests from a publisher, and there are two ways you can get tests from a publisher. I'm going to show you both of those, and it's kind of unclear which ones are which, so I want to show you both of them so you get an idea of how to import them. The first way to do that is actually to import tests right into here, into your tests area. So again, I went to Course Tools, I went to Test Surveys and Pools, I clicked on Tests, and it brought me here. And we said we had two options up here. I can either build tests or I can import tests. I'm going to import this test right now. So I'm going to click Import, and then it's going to ask me, where is this test I want to import? Now, in order to get something from a publisher, the publisher is going to send you information that says, here's where you can go to get all the tests for that course. You're going to go to a website, and you're actually going to have to download them onto your computer first. So when you download them through a browser, usually they go to your downloads folder. But you'll want to go there first and get the tests. And when you get them, they are going to look like they come down as zip files. So they'll look something like this on the page. It might be a test export. It might say the name of the course from the publisher, but they'll all be zip files, and zip files is what's important here. They might say zip at the end, and you can't really see it here. Let me see if I can do a larger, extra large icons. They'll have this little zipper on them because they're zipped up. Zipped up means they're compressed. They're really small files instead of the really large files that's inside of them. So you want it to be a zipped file. That's what we want so that we can pull it into Blackboard. So you'll go to the publisher site first and grab it. Then you'll come back to here. Once it's back here, then you would go into your test surveys and pools, import test, and then you would click on Browse My Computer. When you click on Browse My Computer, then it's going to say, where is this? Now, for me, it's in my Downloads folder. And usually with your browser, that's where it's going to send it. But you'll want to make sure in your specific browser and your setup where those are. I'm going to find the one that I want, and I'm going to click on it. And you can either double click on it or click on it and say Open. It's going to then bring it here, and I can click Submit, and that will now pull that test right into here. It says it was processed. The log is complete. It shows that, and when I click OK in the bottom right-hand corner, I now have my test showing up into here. Okay. So that's how I can pull in multiple tests into one thing. So some publishers put things in where each test is its own zip file. If that's the case, then you'll come here to do that. Again, I go to Import Test. I can click on Browse My Computer, and then it's going to ask me where that is. I'm going to pull in one more just so I have a couple in here. I'm going to click Submit. It's going to say, yes, it did it. And now I have 3 tests inside of here. So that's one way to do it where the tests are individual. The other way you can do it is when the tests are bundled all together. When you have 5, 6, 10, 12, I've seen 70 or 80 in some of the publishers' stuff. When it's brought in that way, you actually do that a different way. So if you try it this way and it doesn't work, then the other way you will try it is by going down to Packages and Utilities, and then you will do an Import a Package. or slash view log. So you would click on import package, and then on the middle of the page, there's an import package button right here. So you click on import package, and then it's going to say, where is this package that you want to get? And so you would click on browse my computer, and then you would go find that zip file for the course. And so you would click on that, and you would click open. And then down at the bottom, it's going to say select course materials, and I just say select all. It just checks everything. If you're worried about that, I'm going to unselect all. The other option is to go down and just check test surveys and pools, and it will just pull in the test surveys and pools, nothing else. Okay. Once you do that, you would click submit, and then it would pull that in. It would be queued. It would be put into the queue. You would be able to get, you would get an email when that import is complete. And then if it was successful, it would pull all of those tests back into course tools, test surveys and pools, and then tests. And now I have all of these tests inside of here. Okay. So Lisa, in order to pull them into one exam, the first thing you have to do is what I just showed you. You have to pull them into the test surveys and pools area first, and then you can reuse them inside of other tests. So that's the next thing I want to show you, is how you can take questions from multiple tests and pull them into one test together. So I'm going to build a new test. I'm going to call it pulling questions together, or using questions from different tests. And I'm going to click submit. I get back to my test canvas again, and now I can go into what's called the reuse questions area, where I can reuse questions that are already inside of Blackboard. And there's 3 different ways you can do that. You can say create a question set, where in a question sets, I'm going to show you, you can pull in 5 questions and then say only use 2 questions from this set, or pull in 30 questions and say only use 10 questions from this set. I'm going to come back to that in a second. The second one, create a random block, says just pull randomly from here as you need to. And it'll pull randomly from a set of questions, a group of questions as it needs to. And then the third one is find questions. So if you want everybody to answer all of the questions, then you would use this one. So I'm going to start with find questions. And when I do, it pulls up a new window, and it says, where do you want to get the questions from? I don't have any pools, so there's nothing listed there. So I'm going to go down to my tests and click the arrow so I can see all of my tests. And then I'm going to check the box next to my Chapter 2 quiz. Now here are all the questions that are inside of here. It shows you the question type. Some are multiple choice, some are true, false. I can select whatever questions I want to from here. If I'm not sure what a question is, there's a little icon right here where I can click on. It will actually show me that question. So I can be like, oh yes, I do like this question. I want to pull it in. So I'm going to check this one, and check this one. When I do that, I'm going to click submit, and then it pulls those questions into my current test that I'm working on right now, each as their own question. So if you notice, it pulled each one in, it shows me what it's like, and each question is worth 1 point. Now, in addition, I want to add a question set to this, where I'm going to pull 5 questions in, but I only want 2 of them for each student. So I'm going to go up to reuse questions again and go create a question set. Again, it pulls up a pop-up window, the same one I had before. I don't have any pools right now, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to go in just to my tests, and I'm going to pull some questions from Chapter 4. And I like this true and false question, this multiple choice question, this multiple choice question, true and false, and multiple choice. Down at the bottom, it shows me I have 5 selected questions. I'm going to click submit, and it's going to bring those into my current test. Now, I'm going to scroll down to where these are. And in this question set, if you notice, it says total questions is 5. Number of questions to display, and that means number of questions to display per student is, I'm going to set this to 2. So of those 5 questions, it's going to randomly pull 2 of those questions in per student. Okay. By default, it did this to 10 points per question, and I want to change this back to 1 point per question. And then I'm going to click submit. So I have 5 multiple choice questions, and then 2 additional questions are going to be pulled from the set. So there's 7 questions that each student is going to get, and this test is now worth 7 points. So if I scroll back up to the top, oh, I'm sorry, I had 4 before, didn't I? Oh, I didn't change my 2 down here, that's why. So 2 questions and submit. There we go. So I have 2 questions from here. Each one is worth 1 point. So now when I scroll to the top, I have 7 questions per student and 7 points total for this. Because of the limited amount of time, that's as much as I'm going to talk about question sets and how to pull things in, but that is how you would be able to do this. Again, you can go back to this, or if you need a little bit more information on this, we can always submit a ticket and talk about that later. I'm going to click OK so that I can say I want to save this. This now gets added into my test area, and I have my using questions for different tests, and I have my Chapter 1 test right here. And as you can see, none of these tests have been deployed yet. I'm just working on them, saving them in the background, and now we want to go and actually deploy them. I'm going to go into my content area. So I'm going to click on content at the left-hand side. Remember, for a lot of you, we can add content areas in. You could have it say Module 1 here. You could have it say Chapter 1, Unit 1. You can go into content. It has to be a content area where you have build content, assessments, tools, and partner content across the top. Inside of here, I'm going to hover over assessments. And now I want to go and deploy the test to an area where students have access to it. So I'm going to say assessment and test. And then it's going to say, what test do I want to deploy here? I want my Chapter 1 test, so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to click Submit. And now I get to the place where I have the options available to me on how to have students interact with the test. So for this one, it pulled in my description, and it asks me, do I want them to see this description before they start? And I'm going to say yes. Do I want to make this available to students? And I want to set this to yes. If I set this to no, they won't have access to this period. So I'm going to set this to yes. Do I want to add a new announcement for this test? If I set this to yes, it's going to post this into the announcements area that hey, there's a new test available now. Make sure you go in and do it. If I set it to no, I can still go in and remind them other ways, but it doesn't send it out into the announcements area. The next option is multiple attempts. If you want them to be able to take this more than once, then check this box. If it's unchecked, then you mean they only get 1 attempt at this. Some people like to give them 2 attempts. You can go in once and try it, and then try it again. See if you can get better the second time. Some people have unlimited attempts where you can go in and do this as many times as you want. This is kind of just a review. I want you to just get the right answers. So once you select multiple attempts, then it can say allow unlimited attempts, or you can set the number. I want them to have 2 attempts on this if they would like. If this multiple attempts is active, then it says, how do you want Blackboard to score the attempts? Do you want to take the last grade that they did? Do you want to take the highest grade of what they did, the lowest grade, the first grade, or an average of their grades? So you can choose how that works and how it is graded in Blackboard after the fact. I'm going to take highest grade because I want them to get the highest grade they can get on this. Forced completion means that once they start this test, they have to finish it in that test. Otherwise, if this is not checked, then there's a save button. They can save it and go and do some other stuff and then come back to this test. So if you want them to do it in one sitting, then you have to check forced completion. I can set a timer for this as well, and there's a place down below where I can add exceptions. So if I have a student that needs a time and a half, I can do that a little bit later under the exceptions. But if I set the timer, I can say you're going to have 20 minutes to do this. The auto submit option, if that's turned off, then at the end of 20 minutes, the students can still continue in the test, and then you can choose if you want to penalize them or not. If I set the auto submit to on, and that means that at 20 minutes, it's submitted for them, period. It just auto submits at the end of that 20 minutes. I then get to the place where I can choose when they can see this. So display after means after this date, it becomes live for them. And then display until means it's displayed until that date, and then it's taken away. So a lot of people will say, I don't want them to have access to this until a certain time. So I'm going to say on August 26th, starting at, and I'm clicking on the little icon next to the time to do this, starting at 9 a.m., they now have access to this. And I'm going to give them 4 days to do this. So that was the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th. On the 30th, actually, I recommend not having the end time be on a weekend. I recommend having the end time be on a date when you're still available to them. Most of them won't do it until the end date. So I'm going to have it be due until you have until 4:30 on Friday to do this. That way I know I'm available if they come freaking out because they can't get to it. And then I can set both of those. Now, both of these will only work if make available to students is set to yes. If this is set to no, this overrides the dates. So just be aware of that. This won't be active at all unless you have this set to yes. Okay. I then get into my test availability exceptions. This is where I can set to say Johnny needs time and a half. So I can go in and say add users and groups. I don't actually have any students in here right now, so I can't do this. But I would click on add users and groups. My students would show up here and I could check that student. I would then click submit and it would show up that I could change the time for this individual student. So if one student needs time and a half, you can do that where everybody else still gets just the normal amount of time. I can put in due dates for this as well. And again, due dates pushes us out to other places to give them reminders on it if you would like. Then I'm going to skip over the self-assessment stuff because most people don't do self-assessments. The last two things are, how do you want the students to see, what do you want the students to see after they complete the test? So by default, it says as soon as they submit it, after submission means as soon as they are done, they will see their score per question, but nothing else. They can't see the right answer. They can't see the wrong answers. They can't see anything, just their score per question. If I want them to see what the right answer is for that, then I have to check the correct answer. If I want them to see what they actually submitted, what they chose, then I have to click submitted over here. And if I want them to see all the answer options, then I have to check all answers. Okay, so if I don't check any of these, then they're only going to see their score per question and nothing else. If I want them to see feedback, remember I said earlier you can type in feedback for them. I can select feedback here. And then incorrect questions, if I check this, it actually shows a big X next to each one. Now, score kind of shows that that's incorrect because I can see, hey, you got a 0 out of 1 on this. You didn't get it right. But if you want it to be really obvious, you have to check the show incorrect answer or show incorrect questions. The other option you can do then is sometimes people like them to see just a little bit at first, but then after everybody's taken the test, so maybe after the due date, you want them to see more information so they can come back in and review this. So that's why there's a second option here, is that you can go back in and say after a specific date, and you can set that, or after the due date, but I have to set a due date up here. So the due date is August 28th at, I said 4:30. After the due date, then I want them to see what the correct answer is and what they submitted. So then they can go back in and they can review from this. They can do some other things with it. The next things are then how the test itself is done. Do I want them to see all the questions at once, or do I want them to see one question at a time? Again, that's personal preference. Some people like them to see the whole thing. They can scroll up and down. Some people only want them to see one question at a time, so they're jumping back and forth. They're focused in on the question that they're on at the time. If you do one at a question at a time, there is something called prohibit backtracking. That means once they go to question 2, they can't go back to question 1. Once they go to question 3, they can't go back to question 2. That's what backtracking means here. If I check this box, it means they're not allowed to do it. If they uncheck it, then they can jump around and they can move. Personally, I don't like the prohibit backtracking. Again, this is personal. There's nothing to say you can't do it. I've always learned where I'd like to look and figure out all the ones I can answer first and then go back and do the harder ones. So for me, I always get frustrated with backtracking. But if that's something where you want to force them to go sequentially through it, you can. And then the last option is randomized questions so that each student gets their questions in a different order. So if I select this, then it randomizes it per student. I'm going to click submit on this. And now this goes onto the page, and it shows that this test is here. Availability, it's currently hidden from students. It will become available to them at this time. If I realize I don't want to do that, I want to change something on it, I can click on the drop down for this. And there's two options here. Edit the test allows me to go back in and edit the test questions. Edit the test options allows me to go back in and do the test options, which we were just on. So I'm going to go to test options so that I can change again how they're doing it. I want to make this available right away, so I'm going to uncheck the display after option. So I'm going to uncheck this so that they can have access to it right away, and then I'm going to click submit. Now it shows up right here, and it's now not grayed out, and it shows that it's available to students. So now I want you to see what it looks like for a student to be able to do this. So I'm actually going to go into the student preview. And I'm going to click on my content at the left-hand side because that's where I put this. And here is my Chapter 1 test. I have it set up so that there was a time on here. So if you notice, by default, it adds some instructions onto this page. It'll have the description. It'll tell me that this is worth 20 minutes. This test is saved and submitted automatically when the time expires. So there's a lot of good information here for students. If I'm not ready to take this right now, I can click cancel and it doesn't count towards me beginning as a student. But when I'm ready, I can click on the title, and when I'm ready, I'm going to click begin. And now I'm into the test. And if you notice, I have it set up one question. I have my timer up here at the top, so I can see that at all times. And here is this matching question. Janet, you were asking what this looked like earlier. So here is my quarter note over here. A quarter note lasts 1 beat. So quarter note, the correct answer is B. A half note lasts 2 beats. So that's A over here. So I'm going to select A. A whole note lasts 4 beats. So that's C. And I messed this one up, but this should be a quarter note that lasts half a beat. So that's D. So this one's on me. I messed this one up. Then I can go on to the next question by clicking the arrow to get to the next question. And I can say, what's the capital of New York? If you notice, it's randomized the question order here. So Albany is now the second answer. There is an option up here at the top called completion status. When I click on this, it shows me which ones I've completed and have not completed. Because I've been allowed backtracking, I can click back to question 1, and I can look at that again if I would like. I can click back to question 2 and look at that again if I like. And then when I'm ready, I can click save and submit. It'll say, hey, are you sure you want to? And actually, it also says right here, if you skipped a question, it will say, you skipped questions 4, 7, and 8. Are you sure you want to submit? If they click cancel, it takes them back into the test. And my timer is resumed. I'm back into my test just like I normally would. If I click, so I could go back and I could answer questions that I've forgotten to answer if I'm able to. Then I can click save and submit, and I can click OK, and it will now submit this. And the first place you get to, it just shows me that, yes, I did submit this. And then it says, click OK to view your results. So I'm going to click OK. And it's now going to show me on the first one, I got 4 out of 4 points. And on the second one, I got 1 out of 1 points. But you remember, I did not check correct. I did not check. I'm sorry. I did not, as the professor, I did not check to show them the correct answer. And I did not check to show them what they submitted. So on the second question, I don't get to see anything other than I got 1 out of 1 points. I don't know what I selected, and I don't know what the right answer is. So if I gotten this wrong, it's the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this. And now I'm back out to the space where I want to go. Now, I did get something that said I could, as the professor, I'd set this up, they could take it 2 times. So I can now click on this again, and it can say, hey, you have this. I can click begin. And it will take me right back. All right, it says here, you've completed 1 of your 2 attempts. Do you want to view the attempts you've already done? Do you want to leave and not do anything, or do you want to start a new submission? So I'm going to click start a new submission, and then I'm right back in, and I can answer this again. I'm going to answer some of these wrong on purpose. I'm just going to say A, D, A, and A. And click save answer. And I am going to go to my next question and click the wrong answer. Actually, I'm not going to click anything here. I'm going to click Save and Submit. And it's going to say here, the following questions may be incomplete. Number 2, click Cancel to return to the test or click OK to submit. So I'm going to click Cancel. I'm going to go in and answer this incorrectly and then click Save and Submit and then say OK. Now, again, it shows me that I submitted this. I can click OK. And it shows me I got 0 out of 4 points on this one, and I got 0 out of 1 points on this one. So again, I'm not getting a lot of feedback here, but I am getting a little bit of feedback with this. When I click OK, it takes me back out. And now if I click on this again, if I try to click Begin, it will say, hey, you've already done all of your attempts. I can now view the attempts that I've done, but I can't go in and take this again. And it shows me what my grade was each time. And if I click on my score at the right-hand side, it actually shows me how I did on that one. Now I'm going to exit the preview. I'm going to go back in as a professor now. So I'm going to exit the preview. I have it set to automatically save anything the student's doing here so I can see this. To see what happened, I'm now going to go into my grade center. So I'm going to click on Grade Center at the left-hand side and go to Full Grade Center. And now I can see the attempts from my students. So if you notice, here's my student. Here is their tests. And if I click on the little arrow to the right of it, it will show me that there were 2 times that the student took it, both on today. And they got this student got a 5 on it the first time and a 0 on it the second time. But it's showing the 5 up here because I had said take the highest score. If I had said take the lowest score, it would do the 0. If I'd said take the most recent score, it would show the 0 here. If I'd said take an average, it would show a 2.5 here right now. So because I had said take the highest score, it's showing a 5 here. If I wanted to go in and see how the student did on this, I would actually, again, click on the drop down and I can go to either of these attempts. And by clicking on the attempt, it now takes me back in and shows me exactly what how the student answered on this one. Excuse me. So if I have to grade something, if there was an essay question I had to grade, then this is how I would be able to go back in and grade it as well. I would see their attempt, I would be able to look at it, and then I would actually manually go in and put in the number of points that I want to give this. So if it's 4 points out of 10, I could put the 4 here. If it's 10 out of 10, I can do that. For essay questions, there's also a place where you can give feedback if you would like to, and you can also use rubrics, which we talked about in other webinars, so we're not covering that today. Okay, so there were a lot of questions that popped up in the chat, so I want to go back and kind of see and make sure we covered all those. So Lisa, you'd asked if we can import several zip files into one exam. So again, you would import all of those in the test area first, and then you can reuse questions to pull them into the test that you want to. Again, once they are imported into your Blackboard space, they are completely editable. So you can edit any question that comes from a publisher for yourself and be able to use that as you would like. Michael, you'd asked if there's any ADA advice regarding an untimed test. If a student gets time and a half, is there any issues? Yeah, if you're giving untimed, unlimited amount of time for all students, then you're good to go. It's only when you set a time limit, then if you know about students that have time limits, that you need to do that. But as long as you're doing unlimited, no, then there's nothing you need to do about that. Then there's also a question of if a student misses the test, having display until or due date have to be adjusted if the tardy student is accommodated, correct? And again, you can do that through test exceptions. So for any student, let's say a student does miss the due date and you want to give them access to it, you can go back in and say, okay, I'm just going to give Chilton access to go in starting on August 31st now and give him access to be able to have it for 2 days to take it because I excuse the reason why they missed it to begin with. So you can give tardy students an accommodation if you would like, but again, that's up to you on if you want to be able to do that. And Janet, you'd asked about reminders for upcoming tests. You can either send out an announcement, which is one way to send out a reminder, or you can send out through due dates. It will set reminders as well. You can either do the announcement through the options in Blackboard, or you can just create your own announcement that says, hey, remember there's a test that's due tomorrow. Okay. If Michael had asked, can students see their exam score if the score per question is unchecked? And the answer is, if you want, they would be able to see their overall score through the grade book unless you hide that column in the grade book. But they wouldn't be able to see their score per question if you uncheck the score per question. So let's say I got a 9 out of 10. Unless I hid the column in the grade book, they would still be able to see the 9 out of 10, but they wouldn't know which question they got wrong and which question they got right. Michael, you asked, does the grade show after the due date if all the result options remain unchecked? So the grade, again, the grade overall would show in the grade center unless you hid that column in the grade center, even if everything's unchecked, but it wouldn't show per question information, it would just show their overall grade. Yeah, so Michael, again, you were talking about how last time you had like five different parts to a test where you had each one be its own test, so they could go in and take part 1 and then go in and take part 2. You'd want to go in and kind of manage that separately, where you could go in and email students to remind them, hey, you've taken parts 1 through 3, but you still need to take part 4 and 5. Yeah, and thanks. Diana had mentioned this on how to add yourself as a student. That's through the little, I call it the eyeball in the top right-hand corner is the enter student preview. Once you do that, when you leave, it'll say, do you want to keep that user or delete the user? If you want to keep that user to be able to mess with things, then that's how you can do that, Laura. And Laura, we usually do that to accommodate extra time. I would recommend doing that through the exceptions inside of a test. So again, that's under for any test that you have. If you click on the drop down to the right of it and go into the test options, that's where you can go in and set the test availability exceptions for a specific student and give them extra time if you would like. Let's see, and yeah, there is some stuff that we didn't cover today. We might do a deeper dive into tests as a second to this that goes more into pools of questions, goes more into pulling content and looking at essay questions. So we might do that like the first week of classes, do like a tests advanced, since we didn't get to everything today. But with that, I'd like to formally stop today. We are at time. And so happy to stick around and answer more questions if you have them. But that's what we wanted to be able to cover today, was how to create tests, how to pull in tests from different sources, how to be able to edit those tests and work with those, how to deploy those tests, how students have access to them, and then how you can see the grades after the fact. So with that, thank you very much. I'm happy to stick around for a little while to answer additional questions if you have them, but that concludes the official portion of this. I want to say thank you to everybody for attending today. The last thing I will say, and I'll share this link into the chat, is we have been posting all of these webinars to our blog, so you have access to them. So I'm going to put the link to this in the chat right now. When you first get here, the top link is to the all of our upcoming trainings, so you can see trainings that will be coming up this semester. So upcoming trainings, you can click on more and it will actually go to the place where you can see all of our upcoming trainings. Just below that is our webinars, and we have our most recent webinars showing up here. And you can go through, we have 10 of them posted up here. And then there's a see all webinars if you want to get to the full list to see all of the webinars that we've been doing over the summer to get to different things. So just want to say that that is there, and we're continuing to add to those as we do those. This webinar will probably be posted in about 24 hours. It takes us a little bit of time to get them up. But we are trying to make them all available for you so you can get to them as you would like. So with that, I'll stop talking. I'll stick around if anybody does have questions or wants to talk through something. But thank you, and hope you're having a good middle of the week and are getting ready for classes as they come up. Like a week and a half we start. So thanks.